A young couple disappears with their 6-week-old baby. No goodbye. No warning. No trace. Then deep in the woods near Houston, 2 bodies are found. Bound. Brutalized. Left to rot without names. They're buried in unmarked graves. And the world forgets them. 40 years pass. Until DNA finally reveals who they were. And detectives notice something that should have been impossible. Their baby was never found. Not in the woods. Not in a grave. Not anywhere. Which means for 40 years. Someone out there knew something. Because baby Holly didn't die that night. She vanished. And no one knew where she went. Welcome to Cold Case Model. Stay with me, because this one will stay with you long after it ends. Before we go any further, if you are watching this for the first time, do yourself a favor right now. Hit that subscribe button. Hit the like button. And leave a comment below telling us what you think happened to baby Holly on that night in Texas. We read every single comment on this channel. Every single one. Now let us go back to where this story begins, in the salt air and palm trees of a Florida coastal town where 2 young people were about to fall in love. The year is 1979. The place is New Smyrna Beach, Florida, a sleepy coastal town where the Atlantic rolls in gently along wide, pale shores, where palm trees sway in the salt air, and where neighbors still wave from their porches without thinking twice. Life in New Smyrna Beach moves slowly. Warmly. With the kind of quiet, unassuming comfort that makes people want to stay forever, where everybody knows everyone's business and that feels like a blessing rather than a burden. Harold Dean Clouse Jr. is 19 years old, and already the kind of man people rely on without asking. He is a skilled cabinet maker, a craftsman in the truest sense of the word, someone who works with his hands and takes pride in doing things properly. Steady hands. An easy smile. The kind of young man who shows up without being called and fixes things without expecting anything back. Tall. Reliable. Grounded. The type who fixes screen doors for widows down the street and genuinely does not consider there to be anything extraordinary about that, because in his world, you look after people. That is simply what you do. His family is close in the way that Southern families are close, not just by blood but by daily life, by shared tables and shared histories and the particular closeness that comes from people who have never tried to be anything other than exactly who they are. His mother, Donna Casasanta, is the warm gravitational center of the family. His sisters Debbie and Cheryl orbit around her. Cousins feel more like siblings. And Dean is the steady center of all of it. The wall you lean against because it has never once given way. Not far away, in that same tight-knit orbit of New Smyrna Beach, lives a girl named Tina Lynn. 15 years old. Bright-eyed and kind, with a laugh that enters a room before she does, the kind of infectious, unguarded laugh that makes strangers want to know what the joke is. Her world is full too, brother Les, sister Sherry, her parents, all woven into the same community fabric of barbecues and birthdays and Sunday dinners and the ordinary, generous rhythms of small-town Florida life. It is through those rhythms that Dean and Tina find each other. Dean's sister is dating Tina's brother. That one small, almost incidental fact puts them in the same rooms, over and over, at family gatherings and neighborhood events and the casual social collisions that define a place like New Smyrna Beach. Until one day it is no longer just family overlap. It is something else. Something that quickens. Something that does not ask permission. Friendship turns to romance quickly. Intensely. With the kind of urgency that only first love knows, the kind that feels, to the people inside it, like it will outlast everything. Like it was always going to happen and nothing in the world could have prevented it. Like it is not chance but destiny, not accident but design. They are young and certain and incandescent in the way that young people in love always are. On June the 25th, 1979, they stand before a judge at the Volusia County Courthouse and say their vows. Dean is 19. Tina is 16. They are young, very young, but utterly, unshakably determined. They do not want extravagance. They do not want a big wedding with rented tablecloths and borrowed silver. They want simplicity. A little place of their own. Enough money to get by comfortably. And most of all, each other. Tina already talks about the day she will become a mother. She has bought a small baby book, the kind with carefully designed spaces for first steps, first words, first everything. She has already imagined the entries she will write. She has already imagined the photographs she will tuck into its pages. Dean promises her he will build the life they both dream of. He says it the way young men say things when they mean every word and have not yet learned that the world does not always honor the promises made inside it. That dream takes its first real shape on January the 24th, 1980. Holly Marie Clouse enters the world healthy, with wide, curious eyes and the round, perfect cheeks that make everyone who sees a newborn want to press their lips to them. The early photographs are pure, uncomplicated joy, the kind of joy that has not yet been touched by anything difficult. Holly cradled in Dean's strong arms, his face full of a tenderness that men his age often do not know they possess until a child appears and shows it to them. Tina gazing down at her daughter with the quiet, stunned awe of new motherhood, that mixture of exhaustion and wonder and love so fierce it almost frightens you. The baby reaching chubby fingers toward the camera like she already owns the whole world and she knows it. Tina fills the baby book with meticulous, loving care. Every milestone recorded in her careful handwriting. Every tiny accomplishment given a date and a note and sometimes a small drawing in the margin. Dean appears in nearly every frame of every photograph, grinning ear to ear, the proud young father who cannot quite believe this little person belongs to him, who keeps looking at Holly the way people look at something extraordinarily beautiful, like they are afraid it might vanish if they look away. They are, by every measure, an ordinary young family. Ordinary in the most wonderful possible sense of that word. But bigger opportunities are calling from farther west. In 1980, the Dallas-Fort Worth metro area in Texas is exploding with growth in a way that is almost cinematic in its scale. Construction sites are everywhere. New subdivisions are rising overnight. The economy of the Sun Belt is pulling workers from all over the South and Southeast, dangling the promise of wages that small coastal Florida towns simply cannot match. And for skilled tradespeople like Dean, a cabinet maker with strong hands and a perfectionist's instinct, Texas represents the possibility of something larger than what New Smyrna Beach can offer. After long talks late into the night, with Holly sleeping in the next room and the soft sound of the Florida dark outside their window, Dean and Tina make the decision together. They pack their belongings carefully and deliberately into their red 1978 AMC Concorde, buckle 6-month-old Holly into her car seat in the back, and pull out of the driveway heading west. They drive the long, flat highway road from Florida to Louisville, a fast-growing suburb north of Dallas, carrying with them nothing more than their savings, their ambition, their love, and the absolute, unquestioned conviction that hard work and togetherness are enough to build a life on. They find a modest apartment. Dean starts knocking on doors at construction companies and cabinet shops, looking for work. Tina settles into the daily rhythm of life in a new city with a baby, the grocery runs and the nap schedules and the particular adventure of figuring out a new neighborhood with a child on your hip. And the letters home continue, regular and warm, full of the small details of a life being built from scratch in a new place. Tina writes regularly to both sets of parents back in Florida. She writes the way people write when they want the people they love to feel close even from a distance, with detail, with humor, with the specific observations that make you feel like you are standing in the room with them. Holly is pulling herself up on furniture now, starting to babble with great confidence and apparent authority. Laughing so hard at peekaboo that she hiccups, which makes everyone laugh harder, which makes Holly laugh harder still. Life is good. Life is ordinary and full and moving in the right direction. In October of 1980, one envelope arrives in Florida that stands out from the others. Tina has enclosed several snapshots of Holly. In them, Holly is standing proudly beside her little walker, looking directly into the camera with a big, open, trusting smile, the smile of a child who has no idea yet that there is anything in the world to be guarded against. Donna Casasanta holds those photographs like something sacred. She passes them around the family. Everyone smiles, everyone comments on how big she has gotten, how much she looks like Dean around the eyes, how she has Tina's smile. The photographs are put away in a special place. None of them know yet that they are the last photographs that will ever arrive. Then the mailbox goes quiet. No more letters. Phone calls to the apartment ring and ring with no answer, the sound of an unanswered phone carrying a particular kind of dread that anyone who has ever waited for a call that did not come will understand immediately. Weeks stretch into a month. Then 2 months. At first, both families tell themselves it is normal, the adjustment period, the busy first months in a new city, the way life sometimes gets so full that correspondence falls behind. Dean and Tina are young, after all. They are not going to write home every week forever. But as Thanksgiving passes without a word, and then Christmas approaches and the silence only deepens, something shifts. The explanations stop being convincing. The reassurances stop landing. The silence grows heavier, more textured, more ominous. The kind of silence that starts to press against you physically. The kind that keeps you awake at 3 in the morning, staring at the ceiling, running through every possible explanation and finding that none of them settle. Donna starts writing letters of her own. They come back marked undeliverable, the ink of Tina and Dean's address somehow already looking like something from the past. She calls the apartment complex directly. The answer is the same, no forwarding address on file. They moved out. No one knows where they went. Worry hardens into dread, and dread hardens into something with no clean name, that particular hollow feeling of a fear that has become too specific to ignore but too unthinkable to name out loud. By early 1981, after months without any contact whatsoever, both families file missing persons reports with local police in Florida. Dean, Tina, and baby Holly are entered into national databases. But the investigation faces a fundamental and frustrating problem from the very beginning. The couple had only lived in Texas for a short time, had no criminal history, no known enemies, no outstanding debts or disputes or red flags that investigators can point to. They were a young family trying to get ahead. They had left no trail wide enough to follow. Traditional investigation has almost nothing to work with, and it knows it. Then something strange happens. Something that will sit in the family's memory for the next 40 years like a splinter they cannot quite reach. At some point in late 1980 or very early 1981, a woman telephones Donna Casasanta. She does not give a last name. She identifies herself only as Sister Susan. Her voice, by all accounts, is calm. Almost serene. The kind of calm that can feel, in the right context, like peace, or in the wrong context, like a performance of it. Sister Susan tells Donna that Dean and Tina have made a choice. They have joined a religious community, a community that encourages and in fact requires its members to fully sever ties with their past lives, to leave behind the attachments of the world they came from and commit wholly to their new one. She says they are safe, content, at peace, and that they do not wish any further contact with their families. As a gesture of goodwill and closure, Sister Susan offers to return the family's red AMC Concorde. Desperate for any sign of life, any confirmation at all that their children are still breathing somewhere in the world, that there is an explanation that makes sense, the family agrees to the arrangement. The car is eventually delivered. But Sister Susan vanishes completely as the people she called about. No last name. No address. No organization name she can be traced through. No way to follow up. Police document the call, they record the returned vehicle, they note the name Sister Susan. But without concrete evidence tying any of it to a crime, without a body, without a witness, without anything to build on, it remains exactly what it appears to be, an unsettling, unprovable thread hanging in the air with no end to pull. The red car sits in the driveway in Florida. And the questions only multiply with every passing season. Where are Dean and Tina? And more urgently, more desperately, more insistently with each passing year, where is little Holly? Far to the south, in a remote and heavily wooded patch of northern Harris County near Houston, roughly 250 miles from the apartment in Louisville where Dean and Tina and Holly had been making their life, something terrible has already happened. Something that cannot be undone, cannot be walked back, cannot be softened by time or distance. On January 6, 1981, a local man walking his German Shepherd along the edge of a secluded, heavily wooded area off Wallaceville Road watches as the dog bounds into the thick palmettos and live oaks, disappears for a moment into the undergrowth, and then reappears carrying something in its mouth that stops the man cold. A severely decomposed human arm. He contacts the Harris County Sheriff's Office immediately. Deputies respond and begin a careful, systematic search of the boggy, overgrown terrain. On January 12, they locate two sets of skeletal remains. The bodies lie relatively close together in the dense vegetation, partially covered by fallen leaves and organic debris and the quiet, indifferent passage of time. Due to the humid subtropical climate of the Houston area and months of exposure, likely since October or November of the previous year, decomposition has advanced far beyond the point where visual identification is possible. Investigators document the scene with the meticulous care that a case like this demands, because they already know they are working with almost nothing. The male victim shows evidence of having been bound at the wrists and ankles, and clear signs of blunt force trauma. The female victim exhibits indications of strangulation. No firearms or other weapons are recovered at the location. No wallets. No jewelry. No documents. No personal effects of any kind that might point toward names or origins. The crime scene has been stripped of identity. The victims are estimated to be in their late teens to early 20s, a young couple, almost certainly. But because Dean and Tina had only recently arrived in Texas from Florida, because they had not yet formed lasting local connections, because no employer in the Houston area is reporting an absence and no landlord in Harris County is raising an alarm, no missing persons reports match these remains. The case enters the system as a double homicide with no identified victims. Traditional identification methods of the era, fingerprints, dental comparisons against existing records, physical descriptions circulated through limited state and national databases, hit dead end after dead end. Harris County forensic artist Mary Mai is brought in to create facial reconstructions from the skeletal features, one of the most skilled and painstaking forensic tasks of that era. She produces soft pastel drawings depicting what the man and woman might have looked like in life. A young man with short hair and open, honest features. A young woman with a gentle, composed expression. These images are distributed to local media, to neighboring law enforcement agencies, to national clearinghouses including the NCIC. Despite wide circulation, despite the images being seen by thousands of eyes across Texas and beyond, no identifications follow. The case is entered as a double homicide. The file goes cold. And eventually, with no leads materializing and limited resources stretched thin across an overworked department, the remains are released and buried in unmarked graves at the Harris County Cemetery for the Unidentified, the Potter's Field, the place where John and Jane does rest in the quiet anonymity of county ground, waiting for a world that has, for now, moved on without them. Back in Florida, the Clouse and Lynn families endure the agonizing limbo of not knowing, a particular kind of suffering that those who have experienced it describe as simultaneously better and worse than grief. Better because hope is still possible. Worse because hope never lets you rest. Donna Casasanta clings to the October 1980 photographs of Holly standing next to her little walker. She puts them in a special place and does not put them away. She holds on to them the way you hold on to the last thing a person touched before they disappeared. The family speculates endlessly about Sister Susan. Was she connected to whatever happened? Was the religious group's story a cover, a deliberately constructed explanation designed to make the families stop asking questions? Police pursue the angle as far as they can, inquiring about known communes and nomadic religious sects that were active in Texas during that period. Some names come up. Some groups are looked at. But nothing concrete ever emerges, and the thread that is Sister Susan remains hanging. As the 1980s give way to the 90s, and the 90s give way to a new century, DNA technology begins to transform forensic investigation. The families provide reference samples whenever authorities request them, blood, cheek swabs, whatever the technology of the moment requires. But early databases are small and narrowly focused. Matches require near-exact hits that do not come. The file on the Wallaceville Road remains is periodically reviewed, periodically updated with whatever new technology is available, and never resolved. The case quietly ages. Then, in 2011, Harris County receives a federal grant from the National Institute of Justice to exhume several unidentified homicide victims for advanced DNA extraction. The aim is straightforward: generate modern genetic profiles that can be entered into expanding national systems and give investigators tools that the 1980s could never have imagined. Forensic anthropologist Dr. Jennifer Love, then the director of the identification unit at the Harris County Medical Examiner's Office and someone known throughout the field for the precision and care she brings to skeletal remains, oversees the exhumation with strict protocols designed to preserve every possible fragment of usable evidence. Testing of the Wallaceville Road remains confirms that the two individuals were not biologically related, no parent-child connection, no sibling bond, no close kinship. This eliminates some assumptions that had accumulated over the years and reinforces the likelihood of a romantic or personal relationship. High-quality DNA profiles are created, uploaded to national databases. And then the investigators wait, with the particular patience that cold case work requires, for the technology or the investigator that will finally make the connection. No immediate matches come. The profiles remain in the system, quietly waiting for the world to catch up. And then, in 2018, the world changes. In April of that year, investigators in California announced the arrest of Joseph James DeAngelo, the Golden State Killer, a man responsible for at least 13 murders and more than 50 sexual assaults spanning more than a decade, a man who had evaded law enforcement for over 40 years. And he was finally caught not by a lucky witness, not by a confession, not by a dramatic break in traditional forensics. He was caught by a genealogist uploading crime scene DNA to a public database, building a family tree backward from distant cousins, and following the shared genetic evidence one careful branch at a time until the name at the end of the tree was beyond dispute. That arrest does not just solve one case. It blows open a door. Suddenly, tools like GEDmatch, a free, publicly accessible database where ordinary people upload their consumer DNA test results for genealogy research, can be used by law enforcement investigators, with consent, to conduct what the field calls reverse tree building. You start not from a known individual but from anonymous DNA at a crime scene. You upload it. You find genetic cousins, people who share centimorgans of DNA with the unknown profile. You build their family trees outward, forward through generations, mapping the branches until two separate trees from two separate families converge at a single point. And that point, if the science holds and the genealogist is thorough, is your individual. It is painstaking work. It requires genetic science and genealogical expertise and an enormous amount of patient, methodical, paper trail detective work, cross-referencing census records and marriage certificates and birth records and death notices and old newspaper archives and school yearbooks and everything else the public record has preserved. But it works. And in the years following the Golden State Killer arrest, it works repeatedly, case after case after case. Late in 2020, the Harris County does catch the attention of Identifiers International, a specialized forensic genealogy group that works cold cases using exactly these methods. Senior forensic genealogist Misty Gillis is browsing cases on the volunteer-run Doe Network, a website built entirely around unidentified persons and long-term missing individuals, maintained by people who refuse to let the forgotten stay forgotten, when she comes across this case. A young couple found together in the woods. No identification after nearly 4 decades. No local ties. Something about it pulls at her. She believes it is solvable. She takes it. With funding from AudioChuck, the true crime podcast company behind enormously successful shows including Crime Junkie, and in close coordination with Harris County forensic anthropologist Deborah Pinto, the exhumed remains DNA is sent for whole genome sequencing. This is a different category of analysis from standard forensic DNA testing. It produces detailed single nucleotide polymorphism data, SNP data, that is far more comprehensive and genealogically useful than anything that could have been generated even a decade earlier. The lab process takes approximately 4 months to generate a usable, high-resolution genetic profile. Once complete, Gillis uploads it to GEDmatch under the approved law enforcement parameters that the platform established in the years following the Golden State Killer case. And she begins the painstaking, meticulous, branch-by-branch work of building family trees backward from genetic cousins the profile has never met and does not know exist. In just 10 days, a strong paternal line match emerges in the data. It points to the Clouse family in Florida. Gillis and her colleague Allison Peacock, who is at this point also with Identifiers International and will later go on to found her own forensic genealogy firm, place a careful, gentle phone call to Dean's sister, Debbie Brooks. These calls are among the most delicate human moments in this entire field of work. The genealogist on the other end of the line is carrying information that could break a person apart, or give them the thing they have been waiting decades for, or, most likely, both at once. They ask the question with the quiet, precise care that only someone who has made calls like this before knows how to use. Is there anyone in your family who has been missing for 40 years or longer? Debbie's response is immediate. Emotional. Raw. The answer that has been living inside her for 40 years comes out before she can think. Yes. My brother Dean. The genealogists share their belief that the male remains discovered off Wallaceville Road are Harold Dean Clouse Jr. Debbie reveals that Dean had a wife, Tina, who vanished at exactly the same time. Allison Peacock quickly pulls Florida marriage records from 1979, confirming Tina Gale Lynn as Dean's spouse. Additional DNA testing and genealogical matching from the Lynn family side of the database soon confirms her identity as well. By October of 2021, 40 years, almost to the month, since those remains were first discovered in that boggy patch of northern Harris County, the Harris County does finally have names. Harold Dean Clouse Jr. and Tina Gale Lynn Clouse. Take a moment with that. Two young people, 19 and 16 when they married. 20 and 17 when they were murdered. Parents of a 6-week-old baby they had carried across the country because they believed in the future they were building. 40 years in unmarked graves, nameless, waiting. And now, at last, their names returned to them by science and determination and the refusal of certain people to let cold cases stay cold. The news arrives in Florida like a wave that knocks you sideways even when you have been bracing for it. Grief and relief collide in a way that has no clean name, that particular combination of sorrow and gratitude that arrives only when the waiting finally ends, but the loss, of course, does not. The families finally know. They can grieve properly. They can say the names out loud in a different register now, not as the names of the missing, but as the names of the found. But one revelation surfaces during the conversation with Debbie Brooks that shifts the entire investigation on its axis in an instant. When Debbie mentions the baby, the genealogists pause. No infant remains had ever been found at the scene off Wallaceville Road. No matching child case existed in any national database. No unidentified infant or toddler matching Holly's age, description, or timeline had surfaced in the FBI's National Crime Information Center or in the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children's database at any point in the 41 years that had passed. Holly Marie Clouse had disappeared alongside her parents on that October night in 1980. But unlike them, she had never been accounted for in death. The question transforms completely in that moment. It is no longer who were these two young people found in the woods of northern Harris County. It has become something far more urgent, something with a pulse, something that is somehow, impossibly, still alive after 4 decades. Where is their daughter? If you are still watching at this point, drop a comment right now with the words, "I'm still here." Let's see who is truly following this story. Because what comes next, what one genealogist, one cold case unit, and one DNA database managed to do with a 40-year-old mystery, is something that has to be heard to be believed. The Texas Attorney General's Cold Case and Missing Persons Unit, a specialized investigative team created in 2019 to address Texas's enormous backlog of unsolved homicides and long-term disappearances, assumes primary responsibility for finding Holly. A multi-agency task force is assembled immediately, the Harris County Sheriff's Office, which holds the original crime scene investigation, the Louisville Police Department, where the family had last been known to reside, the Volusia County Sheriff's Office in Florida, where the original missing persons reports were filed 4 decades earlier, and the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, whose expertise in long-term child cases and age progression forensic artistry is going to be essential. The first steps are methodical, layered, and pursued simultaneously on multiple fronts. NCMEC forensic artists take the handful of 1980 baby photographs of Holly Marie Clouse, those precious, irreplaceable snapshots that Tina mailed home in October of that year, and apply state-of-the-art age progression techniques developed through decades of working with exactly these kinds of long-term missing child cases. They factor in the genetic inheritance visible in both parents, Dean's strong jawline and broad forehead, Tina's soft eyes and the particular gentle quality of her expression. They apply what the field knows about how faces age from infancy to middle age, adjusting for lighting, for the way bone structure settles, for the specific markers that distinguish the face of a woman in her early 40s. The resulting composite image depicts a woman with dark hair, an approachable face, and an expression that blends quiet strength with something warmer underneath it. This image is distributed widely, to law enforcement databases, to social media, to media outlets across Texas, Oklahoma, and the surrounding region. Meanwhile, DNA reference samples already collected from multiple Clouse and Lynn relatives, aunts, uncles, first cousins, are uploaded to public genealogy platforms with law enforcement opt-in parameters enabled. Investigators set narrow, specific search criteria, high centimorgan matches, 1,500 or above for a first-degree relative, 600 to 1,200 for closer extended family, combined with shared matches visible across both the Clouse and Lynn sides simultaneously. Any profile that appears to show adoption, foster placement, or unknown biological origins prior to age 2 is flagged immediately for further investigation. At the same time, Misty Gillis and Allison Peacock continue working their parallel genealogical track. They have already built robust, detailed family trees for both the Clouse and Lynn lines during the identification phase. Now, with Holly confirmed as an infant who disappeared without a trace, they expand those trees exponentially, reaching into more distant cousins, more obscure branches, testing more combinations of shared DNA matches against the available data. They monitor new uploads to GEDmatch daily, with the particular vigilance of investigators who know that the profile they are looking for might arrive in the database tomorrow, or in a week, or after a year, but that when it does, they need to catch it immediately. The mysterious Sister Susan phone call is also revisited with fresh eyes. Although the original phone records have long since been destroyed by the passage of time, detectives re-interview every surviving family member who remembers that call, pressing for every detail that memory has preserved: the caller's voice, her regional accent or lack of one, her specific word choices, her phrasing, anything that might help connect her to a specific person or community. The return of the red AMC Concorde suggests that someone had physical possession of that vehicle very shortly after the couple's disappearance. Possibly the same person who removed Holly from whatever happened off Wallaceville Road. Investigators also quietly reach out to former members of nomadic religious and communal groups that were active in Texas during that late 1970s and early 1980s period. One group draws particular and sustained attention: the Christ family. A decentralized, non-violent religious sect that attracted followers across the Sun Belt during that era. Known for its members traveling barefoot and wearing long white robes. Known for strict vegetarianism and the rejection of leather products and most material possessions. Known for a transient, anti-materialist lifestyle that moved between informal communities and kept a deliberate distance from mainstream institutions. Former adherents are interviewed across multiple states. Some of them recall the name Sister Susan. It was used, they say, within certain circles during that period. But no one can confirm any direct involvement in violence. No one can place Sister Susan at the scene on Wallaceville Road. No one is willing or able to connect the dots to a crime. Forensic anthropologists, working with the detailed case file, refine the time of death estimate for Dean and Tina to late October or early November of 1980, based on insect activity in the remains, soil conditions at the burial site, and the known rates of decomposition in the humid Texas climate. This places Holly's separation from her parents very close to the murders, likely within days of that terrible night, or even within hours. Investigators begin to build a working theory: whoever killed the couple may have taken the infant afterward, either to prevent her from being found as a witness to whatever happened, or, and this is the more hopeful possibility, to place her in some form of informal adoption arrangement, passed along through whatever network Sister Susan belonged to. This hypothesis drives a focused search into Texas and neighboring states' adoption records from 1980 through 1982, with particular attention to church-based or community-based placements, the kind that bypassed formal government agencies entirely and left no paper trail in any state system. For months, promising leads surface and are carefully, methodically eliminated. A woman in her early 40s in Kansas whose adoption records, when fully traced, connect to a different state and a different year. Another woman in New Mexico who shares significant DNA with the Clouse line but whose biological parents are verifiably alive and accounted for during the relevant window. Each false lead carries its own particular weight, the temporary elevation of hope, the careful work of investigation, the deflation of elimination. But genealogy is a process of exclusion as much as inclusion. Every lead that is eliminated narrows the field for the one that will eventually hold. Then, in the first week of June of 2022, a new upload to GEDmatch triggers an immediate high-priority alert in Misty Gillis's monitoring system. The profile belongs to a woman in her early 40s living in central Oklahoma. She shares over 1,700 centimorgans with multiple Clouse relatives, and nearly 1,600 centimorgans with multiple Lynn relatives. These are figures so high, so consistent across both family lines simultaneously, that there is no realistic genetic explanation other than a single, obvious one. She is the biological child of Dean Clouse and Tina Lynn. Her own uploaded family tree lists her as adopted in infancy, raised by a pastor and his wife in a small church community, with no biological family of any kind documented prior to age 2. The match is overwhelming. Definitive. Beyond dispute. Gillis and Peacock contact the Texas AG unit within hours. Detectives move quickly and, critically, discreetly, because the woman they are looking for has no idea this search has been happening, and the news that is coming will require every ounce of sensitivity and care that the investigators can bring to it. They verify her current name. Holly Miller, married, age 42. She lives in Cushing, Oklahoma, a quiet town of about 8,000 people set into the rolling plains roughly 300 miles north of the woods off Wallaceville Road where her parents were found. She works at Nate's Deli and Grill. She has 5 children of her own. She goes to church. She knows her neighbors. She lives a stable, unremarkable, genuinely good life built on family and faith and the ordinary daily work of being a person in the world. She has absolutely no idea that 2 investigators from the Texas Attorney General's office are about to walk through the door of her deli. June the 7th, 2022. The date that would have been Harold Dean Clouse Jr.'s 62nd birthday. 2 investigators from the AG's cold case unit walk into Nate's Deli and Grill during the lunch rush. The place is busy, the comfortable, clattering noise of a small-town lunch crowd, orders being called, coffee being poured, the sound of a normal Tuesday afternoon in Cushing, Oklahoma. The investigators wait. They do not rush. They sit with their coffee and they wait for the crowd to thin, for the noise to settle, for the right moment. Then they ask to speak with Holly privately, in the back office. They begin gently. These investigators have done difficult work for a long time, and they know how to begin gently. They show her the NCMEC age progression image first. The composite drawing of the woman Holly Marie Clouse might have grown into, the woman with dark hair and the expression of quiet strength that the forensic artists built from the DNA of 2 people murdered 4 decades ago. Holly looks at it. Something moves across her face that is hard to name. Then the investigators show her the original 1980 baby photographs, the last photographs Tina mailed home. The baby at the walker. Staring into the camera. Smiling with complete, unguarded trust. They tell her everything. The 41-year journey. The unidentified remains discovered off Wallaceville Road in January of 1981. The long cold decades of nothing. The 2011 exhumation that generated the DNA profiles that changed everything. The 2020 genealogy investigation funded by AudioChuck and carried out by Misty Gillis and Allison Peacock. The breakthrough identification of her parents in October of 2021. The realization that no infant remains had ever been found at the scene. The search for the missing baby that led, step by meticulous step, to a DNA match in a genealogy database uploaded by a woman in central Oklahoma who thought she was looking for distant cousins. Holly listens in stunned silence through all of it. 41 years of answers arriving in a single afternoon, in the back of a deli, in a town in Oklahoma, on her father's birthday. She has always known she was adopted. The McGoldriches, Pastor Philip McGoldrich and his wife, had raised her in a loving church home after two barefoot women in long white robes appeared at their small community church one day, not long after the autumn of 1980, with a baby in their arms and a birth certificate in their hands and a handwritten note purportedly from Dean, relinquishing parental rights and asking that the child be raised in a good Christian home. The McGoldriches had never hidden the adoption. They had told Holly as soon as she was old enough to understand. They simply had no further details about her origins, no last name, no hometown, no way to trace the barefoot women who had brought her. And Holly had grown up in that home feeling secure and loved and entirely held by the family she knew. The adoption was not a wound in her life. It was simply a fact, gentle and unremarkable, a starting point rather than an absence. And now the investigators are telling her that the gentle story has a devastating beginning. That the birth certificate the barefoot women brought was real. That the baby in those 1980 photographs is her. That the man who cannot put that baby down, the one grinning ear to ear in every single frame, is her father. That the woman gazing down with the quiet awe of new motherhood is her mother. That both of them are dead. That they have been dead for 41 years. That they were murdered. That they never relinquished her. The detectives confirm everything through DNA. Unequivocally. Definitively. Without any shadow of doubt. She is Holly Marie Clouse. That same afternoon, with her consent and with the care that a moment like this deserves, arrangements are made for a Zoom call. More than 25 biological relatives, aunts, uncles, first cousins from both the Clouse and Lynn families, gather together in Florida. They have been told only that there is news. That someone wants to speak with them. When Holly appears on screen, the room on the other end of the connection fills with sounds that are almost impossible to describe, gasps and crying and multiple voices all speaking at once because everyone has been waiting 41 years and the idea of waiting one more second is completely impossible. Dean's sister Debbie Brooks speaks first, through sobs that she does not try to contain. We've been looking for you your whole life. Think about the weight of that sentence. Think about carrying it inside you for 41 years, rehearsing it without knowing you were rehearsing it, waiting for a face on the other side of the words. And now there is a face. Now there is a person. Now there is Holly, in her kitchen in Oklahoma, tears streaming down the face that has her father's jawline and her mother's eyes. Aunts and cousins hold up faded baby photographs toward the camera like offerings, like evidence, like gifts. They share stories, of Dean's easy laugh that could fill a room without effort, of how he would drop everything to help a neighbor, of Tina's gentle hands and her careful, loving attention to Holly's baby book, of the way the whole family had gathered around those October 1980 photographs when they arrived, everyone smiling at how big the baby was getting, how bright, how alive. They describe celebrating Holly's birthday every January the 24th for 41 years. Even in the lean years. even in the years when hope had become so thin as to be almost invisible. Even then, because Dean and Tina had loved this child completely, and that love deserved to be honored, and Holly deserved to be remembered even if she was not there to receive it. In November of 2022, supported by NCMEC, Holly travels to Florida for an in-person reunion. The gathering lasts days. Long hugs that seem to compress 4 decades into a single held breath. Photo albums spread across kitchen tables, passed from hand to hand. Late-night conversations running far past midnight about the parents she will never meet in the flesh but now knows intimately, through every story, through every shared expression on the faces around her, through the features she sees reflected back from her own children. She sits across from a cousin and sees Dean's jawline. She catches her aunt's smile and sees Tina. She grieves deeply and fully for the people who made her. And at the same time, she feels something enormous and complicated, a gratitude that she does not have words wide enough to hold. In the quiet moments between gatherings, she thinks about Pastor McGoldrich reading her bedtime stories, teaching her to pray, walking her down the aisle on her wedding day. She has 2 mothers who loved her, one she has known since the beginning of her memory, one she is meeting now through stories and photographs and a baby book filled with careful, loving handwriting. The duality is both beautiful and painful in equal measure. But she does not run from either side of it. She holds both truths at once, the way people of genuine grace hold contradictions, not by resolving them but by making room for both. She does not hate the people who took her parents. She hates what was taken. But she chooses to live in the light of what was given back. She says this clearly and with conviction and means every word of it. And then she does something that turns a personal miracle into a broader beacon of hope for families who are still waiting. She acts. Together with forensic genealogist Allison Peacock, Holly co-founds Genealogy for Justice, a 501c3 nonprofit organization whose mission is as simple as it is ambitious: raise funds and provide expert technical support for genetic genealogy investigations into unidentified human remains across the United States. The cases where traditional methods have been exhausted. The John and Jane Does who have waited for decades in anonymous graves while their families live in the particular purgatory of not knowing. The children whose names were never returned to their markers. Genealogy for Justice uses the same tools that solved Holly's own mystery: whole genome sequencing, public genealogy databases with law enforcement opt-in, expert reverse tree building, relentless cross-referencing of public records. And the results speak with extraordinary clarity. In 2023, a 1982 unidentified female from South Carolina is positively identified as Virginia Higgins Ray, the organization's first official success story. A name returned to a grave. A family given an answer. In 2024, Genealogy for Justice helps identify the Daytona Beach Jane Doe as Pamela K. Whitman, a woman missing since 1981. Additional cases follow in succession: the Picture Rocks Jane Doe from 1985, a Volusia County John Doe from 1982, the South Island John Doe. Each identification is a quiet, profound triumph: a file closed, a family released from decades of not knowing, a human being restored to their name. As of early 2026, the Genealogy for Justice Fund has reached 45% of its $100,000 goal and continues to support active ongoing investigations. Holly becomes one of the most recognized voices in the forensic genealogy community. In her 2023 ABC 2020 interview, she speaks with the raw, unguarded honesty of someone who has nothing left to protect. "I knew I was adopted," she says, "but I never imagined this. It was like my whole life suddenly had 2 beginnings." She describes the moment in the deli when the investigators showed her the age progression image and the baby photographs. I looked at that face, she says, and I knew it was me. But I also knew that the little girl standing by that walker had no idea what was coming. In a 2024 interview with a television news program in Tulsa, she addresses the particular, specific cruelty of not knowing. It is tormenting to the soul, she says, when you just do not know. Not knowing what happened to your parents. Not knowing if your child is alive somewhere. That is a special kind of suffering that does not go away and does not get easier. Genetic genealogy is ending that suffering for more families every single year. Her memoir, Finding Baby Holly, Lost to a Cult, Surviving My Parents' Murder and Saved by Prayer, co-authored with journalist Nicole Young, becomes both a personal story and a public manifesto. She writes of the shock of the deli, the tears on the Zoom call when 25 relatives appeared on screen all at once, the in-person reunion where she finally held the hands that had once held her mother. She writes about forgiveness, not just toward the still unknown perpetrators of what happened off Wallaceville Road, but toward the circumstances that rerouted her entire life before she was old enough to form a single memory of the people who made her. Proceeds from the book support Genealogy for Justice directly. And the book itself has inspired thousands of readers to upload their DNA to public genealogy databases, because every upload is a potential match, every match is a potential answer, and every answer is a family that finally gets to stop waiting. The murders of Dean and Tina Clouse remain unsolved. The Texas Attorney General's Cold Case and Missing Persons Unit continues to pursue every available lead, particularly around nomadic religious communities that were active in Texas in the late 1970s and early 1980s. The Christ family remains a consistent focus. Detectives have interviewed former members at length. A woman confirmed that she used the name Sister Susan during the early 1980s and acknowledged that she returned the red AMC Concorde to the Clouse family in Florida. She denied any knowledge of, or any participation in, violence of any kind. No physical evidence has emerged. No credible witness has come forward. No arrest has been made. Holly remains hopeful. Realistic. Patient in the way that people become patient when they have already waited longer than most people ever have to wait for anything. She says, I do not think the people we have spoken to committed the murders. I think they were living their way of life. But someone knows something about what happened that night. And I pray that one day, compassion will bring that truth forward. There is one more thing that belongs in this story. One more loss that sits alongside everything else. Donna Casasanta, Holly's grandmother, the woman who kept those October 1980 photographs in a special place for 41 years, who passed them around the family, who whispered Holly's name in prayers long after hope had worn itself down to almost nothing, she lived to learn that Holly had been found. She wept when she heard. She said it felt like a birthday gift from heaven, the thing she had asked for in prayers she had almost stopped believing in. And then, in October of 2023, Donna passed away. Holly never got to hold her grandmother's hand in person one final time. That near miss, the door that closed by just a fraction of an inch before Holly could step through it, still surfaces in her voice when she speaks about it. I wish I could have told her thank you in person, she says. Thank you for never giving up on me. Holly Marie Clouse was born on January the 24th, 1980, into a world full of love and the most ordinary possible dreams. Her parents were a 19-year-old cabinet maker and a 17-year-old girl who wanted nothing more extraordinary than a small apartment, steady work, and each other. They had a red car and a baby and an open road heading west and the absolute, uncomplicated belief that those things were enough to build a life on. And on some dark night in late October or early November of 1980, in a remote and wooded stretch of northern Harris County, Texas, those ordinary dreams were violently, permanently silenced. But their daughter survived. She was carried out of the darkness by two barefoot women in white robes and placed into the arms of a pastor who raised her with bedtime stories and Sunday hymns and love that did not require explanation to be real. She built a life in Oklahoma that her parents would have been proud of. She married and raised 5 children of her own. She made sandwiches in a deli in a small town and did not know, for 42 years, that she was the missing piece in a puzzle that an entire family in Florida had never stopped trying to complete. And now she spends her days making sure other families, other daughters, other sons, other mothers, other fathers still waiting in the silence, are not left there forever. 41 years of silence. 1 DNA upload to a public database. 10 days of genealogical detective work. And 1 conversation in the back of a deli on a Tuesday afternoon on what would have been her father's 62nd birthday. Sometimes the science catches up. Sometimes the people who refuse to forget are rewarded, even after the waiting has gone on so long that it has become its own kind of life. Sometimes a baby who vanishes into the dark comes back, grown, alive, carrying her mother's eyes and her father's jawline into every room she enters for the rest of her life. This is the story of Holly Marie Clouse. This is the kind of story Cold Case Model was made to tell. And Dean and Tina, wherever you are, she is okay. She was always okay. She found her people. She found her way back. And she is still looking for the truth about what happened to you on that October night, and she will never stop. If this story moved you, if you believe that Dean and Tina deserve justice and that families like theirs deserve answers instead of silence, then do something right now. Hit the like button. It takes 1 second and it tells the algorithm that stories like this one matter. Subscribe to Cold Case Model so you never miss a case. Share this video with someone you know who loves true crime, because every single view is one more person who knows Holly's name, and her parents' names, and the story that almost went untold forever. And if you truly want to do something that could help solve a case just like this one, go right now to GEMatch or Ancestry or 23andMe and upload your DNA to a public database. You might be the match that closes the next file. You might be the distant cousin a genealogist is searching for at this very moment. You will never know whose family tree you are sitting in until someone looks. Leave a comment below, tell us what this story meant to you, tell us whether you believe justice will ever come for Dean and Tina, and tell us which cold case you want Cold Case Model to cover next. We are listening. We are always listening. Thank you for being here. Thank you for caring about these stories. And to the Clouse and Lynn families, thank you for never giving up on her. Not even once. Not even for a single year.